The grand hall of the Galactic Concord was silent. Thousands of delegates from different worlds sat in perfect rows, their eyes fixed on the glowing platform at the center of the chamber. This ceremony happened once every cycle, and it always followed strict tradition. Royal heirs chose their future partners or champions from among their own species, or, at most, from powerful allied races. No one expected what happened next. Princess Alira of the Varelian throne stood tall on the platform. Her silver-blue skin shimmered under the lights, and the crystal markings along her arms pulsed softly, showing her calm focus. She had listened patiently to the names announced before her: warriors, nobles, commanders, and genetic elites from advanced civilizations. Then she spoke a single name, a human name. Gasps echoed across the hall. Every screen flickered as translators rushed to confirm what they had heard. Murmurs spread like fire through dry grass. Some laughed in disbelief. Others stared in open shock. At the far edge of the chamber, seated among Earth's small diplomatic delegation, Daniel Mercer froze. He had come as an observer, nothing more. Daniel was not a soldier. He wore a simple dark uniform, no medals, no weapons, no enhanced armor. His brown eyes widened as he looked around, convinced there had been a mistake. But Princess Alira was looking directly at him. Her gaze did not waver. "The human," she said again, her voice clear and steady. "Daniel Mercer." The Concord erupted. Alien nobles hissed in outrage. Military delegates whispered insults. Some laughed openly. A few looked almost offended, as if the very idea was an insult to the ceremony itself. A human? Humans were known in the galaxy, but not feared. They were adaptable, stubborn, and oddly creative, but physically weaker than most warrior races. They lacked natural weapons, scales, claws, or psychic strength. Daniel slowly stood. Every eye followed him. He felt his heart pounding, but he kept his posture straight. Years in diplomacy had taught him one thing: panic only made things worse. He walked forward, each step echoing loudly in the silent space. As he reached the platform, he bowed slightly, not knowing the proper gesture, but offering respect anyway. "Princess," he said simply. Alira inclined her head in return. The High Arbiter of the Concord, an ancient being of light and stone, floated forward. "Princess Alira of the Varelian throne," it said. "You understand the meaning of your choice?" "I do," she replied without hesitation. "You understand the consequences?" "Yes." The Arbiter turned to Daniel. "Human representative, do you accept being chosen?" Daniel swallowed. He did not fully understand what he was accepting. He knew enough, though. This was not symbolic. This was binding, political, personal, dangerous. He thought of Earth, of his family, of the millions watching this broadcast across human space. Then he looked at the princess again. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held something deeper: trust. "I accept," Daniel said. The chamber exploded into noise. Within hours, the news spread across the galaxy. A human had been chosen by a royal heir. On Virel Prime, the royal capital of the Varelian Empire, the reaction was far less controlled. Queen Salith stood before the massive star-view window of the throne room, her long crest flaring in agitation. Beside her, King Therion sat on the throne, his heavy armored form perfectly still. "A human," the queen said sharply. "Out of every noble bloodline, every warrior caste, every ancient house, she chose a human." "They are fragile," one advisor added. "Short-lived, unremarkable. They are unpredictable," another said. "That alone makes them unsuitable." 1744. 2R06. The king raised one massive hand, silencing the room. "Our daughter is not foolish," Therion said slowly. "She would not make such a choice without reason." "Then we will hear that reason," the queen replied coldly. In person, Daniel's first view of Virel Prime left him speechless. The planet was a world of towering crystal cities and wide-open skies. Massive floating structures drifted gracefully above the ground, connected by beams of light. Everything felt ancient and powerful, and hostile. As he stepped off the transport ship, royal guards surrounded him. They were tall, broad, and heavily armored, their glowing eyes never leaving him. Princess Alira walked beside him. "You don't have to stay calm for my sake," she said quietly. "I'm not," Daniel replied honestly. "I just don't see the point in showing fear." Alira glanced at him, something like a smile touching her lips. The palace gates opened with a deep, resonant sound. Inside waited the rulers of one of the most powerful empires in known space. Daniel stood before the throne. Queen Salith's gaze cut into him like a blade. King Therion studied him in silence. "This," the queen said, "is the human?" "Yes, mother," Alira replied. "He looks breakable." Daniel did not react. "Tell me," the queen continued, stepping down from the throne, "what makes you think you deserve to stand here?" Daniel met her eyes. "I don't think I deserve anything," he said. "I was chosen. I showed up." The court fell quiet. The queen narrowed her eyes. "You do not boast." "No," Daniel said. "Humans learned long ago that boasting doesn't save you when things go wrong." The king leaned forward slightly. "Then what does?" "Working through the problem," Daniel answered. "And standing your ground when it matters." Some of the nobles scoffed. Others listened more closely. "You will be tested," Queen Salith said. "Not for strength. Not for beauty. Not for status." Daniel nodded. "That's fair. You may fail," she added. Daniel's voice remained steady. "That's possible. And if you fail," the queen said, "you will be sent away in shame." Daniel looked at Princess Alira. She met his gaze, unafraid. "I understand," he said. The king finally spoke again. "Then let the trials begin." Later that night, Daniel stood alone in his assigned chamber. The room was vast, elegant, and cold. He sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long breath. He was not sure how he had ended up here. A human diplomat, standing before alien royalty, about to be judged by beings who could crush him without effort. And yet, he did not regret accepting. Across the palace, Princess Alira looked out over the city lights. For the first time since the ceremony, she allowed herself a moment of uncertainty. She had not chosen Daniel for power or politics. She had chosen him because, during the Concord debates, he had been the only delegate who listened instead of argued, the only one who admitted ignorance instead of pretending superiority. In a galaxy full of strength, humility had stood out. Tomorrow, the trials would begin, and the galaxy would learn something it had long forgotten: that humans were not weak, they were resilient. The morning on Virel Prime came slowly. Soft light filtered through the crystal walls of the palace, casting long patterns across the floors. Daniel Mercer stood quietly in his chamber, already awake. He had slept little, not because of fear, but because his mind refused to slow down. Today, the trials would begin. A soft chime echoed through the room. The door opened, and two royal guards stepped inside. They were tall and broad, their movements calm but alert. "The first trial awaits," one of them said. Daniel nodded and followed them without a word. As they walked through the palace halls, Daniel noticed how carefully everything was designed. The halls were wide, with no corners to hide behind. The ceilings were high, making anyone feel small. It was not built for comfort. It was built to remind visitors where they stood. They entered a circular chamber filled with alien nobles, advisors, and scholars. Princess Alira stood near the center, her posture calm but her hands clasped tightly behind her back. At the far end sat Queen Salith and King Therion. "The first trial," the queen announced, "is one of judgment." A low hum filled the room as a holographic display rose from the floor. It showed a distant colony, world mountains, cities, and orbiting stations. "This world," the queen said, "has requested aid. A structural failure in their energy network threatens millions. Our engineers disagree on the solution." The display shifted, showing multiple options. Each carried risks. Each could fail. The queen's eyes locked onto Daniel. "You will choose." A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Daniel took a slow breath. "You want my opinion." "We want your decision," the queen corrected, "and your reasoning." Daniel stepped closer to the display. He studied the information carefully. He did not rush. He asked questions, surprising several scholars with the depth of his focus. "What happens if we isolate the network?" he asked. "It would prevent a collapse," one engineer replied, "but the colony would lose power for days. And if we reinforce it? It may hold," another said, "or it may fail completely." Daniel nodded. "How long until failure?" 16 hours, came the answer. Daniel straightened. "Then the safest choice is controlled shutdown, with temporary power rerouting." Murmurs spread. "That solution delays growth," a noble argued. "It saves lives," Daniel replied simply. The Queen studied him. "You choose caution over ambition." "I choose people over pride," Daniel said. The room fell silent. The king raised a heavy brow ridge. "The trial is concluded." The display vanished. Daniel stepped back, unsure if he had succeeded or failed. Queen Salith leaned back on her throne. "You did not impress us with brilliance," she said. "But you did not disappoint us either." It was not praise, but it was not rejection. The second trial came sooner than Daniel expected. He was escorted to an outdoor arena carved into a cliffside overlooking a deep crystal valley. The wind carried strange scents and distant sounds. Alien warriors stood at attention along the edges. "This is not a combat trial," the king announced. "Humans would not survive that." Daniel appreciated the honesty. "Instead," the king continued, "this is a trial of endurance." The arena floor shifted. Sections rose and fell. Gravity fluctuated without warning. Daniel stepped forward as the field activated. At first, it was manageable. The ground tilted, forcing him to adjust his balance. Then gravity pulled harder, pressing down on his body. His legs strained, his breath grew heavy. Some nobles smirked. Alira watched silently, her jaw tight. Daniel stumbled once, then steadied himself. He focused on his breathing. Humans were not the strongest, but they were used to pushing past limits. Minutes passed. The gravity increased again. Sweat soaked through Daniel's clothes. His muscles screamed in protest. His vision blurred at the edges. "Yield," a voice called. Daniel shook his head. He did not run. He did not fight. He endured. When the field finally deactivated, Daniel dropped to one knee but did not fall. Silence filled the arena. "He did not quit," someone whispered. Daniel stood slowly, forcing himself upright. The king nodded once. Sufficient. That evening, Daniel was summoned again. This time, the room was smaller, more private. Only the queen, the king, and Princess Alira were present. "You continue to surprise us," Queen Salith said, her tone measured. "Not with strength, but with restraint." "I don't see another option," Daniel replied. The queen tilted her head. "You never try to dominate." Daniel met her gaze. "Humans learned that domination creates enemies faster than solutions." The king studied him closely. "Tell me, human, why did you accept my daughter's choice?" Daniel hesitated. "Because walking away felt wrong," he said. "And because I believe trust deserves respect." Alira's eyes softened. The queen said nothing. Later that night, Daniel wandered the palace gardens under guard supervision. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly, lighting the paths. Alira joined him, her steps quiet. "You're doing better than expected," she said. "I don't feel like it," Daniel admitted. "That's because these trials are not meant to be won," she said. "They are meant to break people." Daniel looked at her. "Then why put me through them?" "Because my parents fear what they don't understand," Alira said softly. "And humans confuse them." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's fair." She stopped walking. "There is something you should know." Daniel waited. "The final trial will not be announced," she said, "and it will not be fair." Daniel exhaled. "That tracks." Alira met his eyes. "You are not alone in this." He nodded. "I know." The next morning, the unannounced trial arrived. Without warning, alarms echoed through the palace. Advisors rushed through the halls. The air felt tense, charged. A system failure had struck the orbital defense ring. Panic spread. Engineers argued. Commands overlapped. Time slipped away. Daniel found himself pulled into the chaos. He listened. He watched. He connected fragments of information others ignored. "This isn't a failure," he said suddenly. "It's a feedback loop." Several heads turned. "If we cut the control signal," Daniel continued, "the system will reset. That risks total shutdown," an advisor snapped. "It's already shutting down," Daniel replied calmly. There was no time left. The king gave a sharp nod. "Do it." The signal was cut. For a moment, everything went dark. Then the systems restarted stable. The alarms stopped. Silence followed. Daniel leaned against a wall, exhausted. Queen Salith looked at him with something new in her eyes. Respect. That night, word spread through the palace. The human had solved a crisis no one else saw clearly. But the trials were not over. They had only begun to reveal what the royal court truly feared. And in the shadows of the empire, forces were already watching Daniel Mercer, wondering how dangerous a calm human could be. The palace of Virel Prime did not sleep that night. Even after the alarms ended and the system stabilized, tension remained in the air. Guards doubled their patrols. Advisors whispered behind closed doors. Screens across the palace replayed reports of the orbital failure again and again. Daniel Mercer became the quiet center of attention. He did not notice at first. He sat in a small chamber near the command wing, sipping water and trying to calm his breathing. His body still felt heavy from the endurance trial, and his mind felt stretched thin. Princess Alira entered the room silently. "You should be resting," she said. "I will," Daniel replied. After things slowed down, she studied him for a moment. "You stopped a failure that could have destroyed half our defenses." "I just saw a pattern," Daniel said. "Anyone could have." Alira shook her head. "They didn't." Across the palace, Queen Salith stood with her advisors. "This human is becoming a symbol," one of them warned. "The court is watching him more closely than they should." "He is still being tested," the queen replied. "But symbols grow whether we allow them or not," another said. "And not everyone welcomes that." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "There are houses that oppose any bond with humans," the advisor said carefully. "They see it as weakness, as dilution." The king, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Then they misunderstand strength." The next trial came disguised as an honor. Daniel was summoned to the Hall of Voices, a vast chamber where representatives of the great houses gathered to debate matters of empire. It was rare for outsiders to be invited. "This is not a trial," Queen Salith said before he entered. "It is a conversation." Daniel nodded. "Those can be harder." She did not deny it. Inside the hall, dozens of nobles watched him with cold curiosity. Some wore expressions of polite interest. Others barely hid their dislike. Princess Alira stood beside him. "You may speak freely," the king announced. "Answer what is asked. Nothing more." The first question came quickly. "Human," a noble said. "Why should an empire built on power respect a species built on survival?" Daniel thought for a moment. "Because survival teaches you what power is for." Murmurs spread. Another voice rose. "Humans bend, adapt, compromise. That is not strength." Daniel turned toward the speaker. "That's how we lasted." A third noble leaned forward. "Would you rule us the same way?" Daniel shook his head. "No. Humans don't rule what they don't understand. We cooperate with it." The room fell quiet. Not everyone liked the answers, but no one could ignore them. Later that day, Daniel was escorted beyond the palace walls. This time, no explanation was given. They traveled to an ancient structure carved into a mountain of crystal and stone. It predated the empire itself. "The final trial," the guard said softly. Inside, the air felt heavy. Old. The walls glowed faintly, reacting to their presence. Princess Alira stopped at the entrance. "I can't go further," she said. Daniel looked at her. "What happens inside?" She hesitated. "Truth." Daniel nodded once and stepped forward alone. The chamber reacted immediately. Light surrounded him. His body felt weightless, then heavy. The walls shifted, forming shapes and images. A voice echoed, not spoken, but felt. "Why do you stand here, human?" Daniel swallowed. "Because I was chosen." "Why accept?" Daniel closed his eyes. because refusing would have been easier. And easier choices don't change anything. The images shifted. He saw Earth. Crowded cities. Storms. Fires. Wars long past. Humans rebuilding again and again. Your kind fails often. Yes, Daniel said. We do. Your kind is weak. Daniel opened his eyes. Then explain why we're still here. Silence followed. Then, the pressure increased. Memories surfaced, fear, loss, exhaustion. Every moment he had wanted to quit something, and didn't. Daniel dropped to one knee. He did not beg. He endured. Finally, the light faded. The voice spoke one last time. You do not seek to rule. You seek to stand. Daniel breathed heavily. That's enough. The chamber fell dark. When he emerged, he collapsed, but strong arms caught him. Princess Alira was there. Her eyes shone with emotion she did not try to hide. You passed, she whispered. The reaction was immediate. Word of the trial spread faster than the truth itself. Some said the human had dominated the ancient chamber. Others said he had survived where many failed. The truth was simpler. He had refused to break. That scared people. That night, a secret meeting took place among several noble houses. This cannot continue, one said. The human is changing the balance. He is not even trying, another replied. That makes it worse. A plan formed quietly. The next day, disaster struck again. This time, it was real. An outer defense station went dark. Communications failed. Sensors showed movement, unknown ships approaching the border. Panic spread across the command wing. This is no accident, an officer said. This is an attack. Queen Salith turned to Daniel without hesitation. What do you see? Daniel studied the data. His eyes narrowed. It's a test, he said. They're probing reactions. Who? The king asked. Someone who thinks we won't act together, Daniel replied. The king straightened. And what would you do? Daniel did not raise his voice. Show them they're wrong. He outlined a response, not aggressive, but coordinated. Defense stations sharing data. Fleets holding position. Instead of chasing shadows, some commanders resisted. It's risky, they argued. So, is reacting blindly, Daniel replied. The king gave the order. The approach stopped. The unknown ships withdrew. The threat passed without a single shot fired. Silence filled the room. Queen Salith looked at Daniel with something close to awe. You guided an empire without commanding it, she said. Daniel rubbed his tired eyes. I just connected people. That evening, Princess Alira found him standing on a balcony overlooking the city. You scared them, she said gently. I didn't mean to. She smiled faintly. That's why it matters. Daniel looked at the glowing world below. I don't want to replace anything here. I know, she said. You want to add to it. They stood together in silence. But far away, beyond the stars, eyes were watching. And the final judgment was coming. The final judgment was announced at dawn. Across Virel Prime, crystal towers lit up with royal signals. Every screen in the empire displayed the same message. The royal court would gather. The trials were complete. A decision would be made. Daniel Mercer stood in silence as attendants prepared him. His body still ached, and his mind felt heavier than ever. He had faced challenges he never expected. Yet this moment felt more difficult than all of them combined. Princess Alira joined him before they entered the grand hall. No matter what happens, she said softly, you did not fail. Daniel looked at her. I hope that's enough. She met his eyes. It is. The grand hall filled quickly. Nobles, commanders, scholars, and foreign delegates took their places. Representatives from dozens of worlds watched closely. What happened today would echo far beyond Virel Prime. Queen Salith and King Therion entered last. The hall fell silent. The queen rose from her throne. Daniel Mercer of Earth, she said, her voice clear and steady. You were brought before us as an outsider. You were judged by our laws, our customs, and our fears. Daniel stood straight. You were not the strongest, the queen continued. You were not the most powerful. And you were never the safest choice. Murmurs rippled through the hall. But, she said, pausing, you endured every trial without seeking advantage over others. She stepped forward. You chose caution when pride demanded risk. You chose patience when others demanded speed. You chose unity when fear demanded control. The queen turned toward the nobles. These are not signs of weakness. The king stood. Strength, King Therion said, is not measured only by force. It is measured by what one protects when force is possible. His gaze rested on Daniel. You protected lives. You protected stability. You protected truth. The hall remained silent. Princess Alira stepped forward and stood beside Daniel. I chose him, she said, her voice steady. Because he listens. Because he does not seek to dominate what he does not understand. And because when everything begins to break, he does not look away. Some nobles looked away, others nodded slowly. Before the final words could be spoken, alarms echoed again. This time, they did not stop. Screens across the hall lit up with urgent warnings. Multiple border systems were flashing red. This is not a probe, an officer shouted. It's a coordinated push. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Queen Salith looked at the data. They waited until now. They expected confusion. Daniel said quietly. The king turned to him. Speak. Daniel stepped forward, every eye on him. They think this moment divides us, he said. So we show them. It doesn't. He pointed to the data. They're spreading pressure, not force. They want us to overreact. Your solution? The queen asked. Daniel did not hesitate. Hold the line. Share control. Let every system support the others. No one acts alone. Some commanders hesitated. This breaks protocol, one said. It strengthens trust, Daniel replied. The king raised his hand. Do it. Orders went out. Across the empire, fleets adjusted position. Defense systems synced instead of separating. Communication lines opened wide. The attacking forces slowed, then stopped, then withdrew. The threat ended without destruction. Across the galaxy, observers took notice. Silence returned to the Grand Hall. Queen Salith turned back to Daniel. You acted without authority, she said. Daniel nodded. I trusted the people you already lead. The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she bowed her head. A queen bowing to a human. Gasps filled the hall. You have passed, she said. King Therion stepped forward and placed a hand over his chest in the ancient sign of acceptance. You are recognized, he declared. Not as an outsider. Not as a symbol. But as one who stands with us. Princess Alira exhaled. Emotion finally breaking through her calm. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had not come to claim anything. Yet, he had been given something rare. Respect. Later, as the hall emptied, Daniel stood alone on a high balcony overlooking the city. The sky shimmered with ships returning to calm patrol patterns. Lights glowed peacefully below. Alira joined him. It's over, she said. It feels like a beginning, Daniel replied. She smiled. That's how change works. Daniel looked out at the horizon. I didn't plan to represent humanity. You didn't have to, she said. You just had to be human. They stood together in silence. Across the galaxy, messages spread. A human had faced royal judgment. A human had helped steady an empire. A human had proven that strength did not always roar. Sometimes, it stood quietly and refused to fall. On Earth, people watched the broadcasts in disbelief and pride. Humanity was no longer underestimated. It was understood.